place. It's like the weirdest dream.
You're not supposed to be here.
Hey y'all, I'm Stella Chung, joined by Ben Horne, production director on Redfall. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
So we have a lot of burning questions, so I'm just gonna get right into it. During the developer direct, we got a glimpse of what the loot is like in Redfall. What were some of the considerations taken when implementing a loot-based system, and can you discuss if you were looking at any other looter shooters to draw inspiration from?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we wanted to make a game where players could instantly feel comfortable with some of the pieces of gear and equipment that they were finding. Assault rifles and shotguns, sniper rifles that could all have rarity included in them that unlock traits that allow you to play a little bit differently. But we also wanted to take a unique spin on that by adding vampire hunting weapons into the game. These are like flare guns and stake launchers, UV beams. These help to defeat the vampires in a very unique way, because in Redfall, vampires can't be defeated by only bullets. They need something special. And so a stake launcher, for instance, can really shoot from a distance and defeat a vampire when they're vulnerable. And that really allows for players to scour the world, look for the weapon that they really want, how they want to play, and allows them to be expressive in that way when taking on the vampire threat.
So not only did you put a lot of thought into that, but also you mentioned it was mentioned in the developer direct that every nook and cranny of the game's playable area was handcrafted. So can you discuss what those might have challenged you, as well as what it meant overall for development?
You know, we had this aspirational goal to deliver the biggest, most ambitious setting that we ever have. And we knew that with that, we wanted to maintain the things about Arcane's DNA that we love, things about our games in the past that we really appreciate. Environmental storytelling, strong kind of narrative throughput in the world so that the world feels lived in, it feels worth saving. And so as we took on this challenge to make such a huge open world, we wanted to make sure that every home that players walked into, a convenience store, had readables. There are thousands and thousands of lines of readables in the game that tell the story of Redfall leading up, you know, the months and weeks and days leading up to the events of Redfall. And we think that's one of the things that sets the game apart and is something that's really special.
It's hard to see a brand new looter shooter enter the fray without players drawing comparisons to others on the market. So what is Redfall doing for players that set it apart from the competition, for a lack of a better word?
Redfall is a game where players will have the opportunity to really move through the world in a way that they are comfortable with. Players that want to move through the world in a fast-paced, action, guns blazing type of style are certainly going to find that when they play Redfall. Players that take a more stealth, methodical, or observational approach, they're going to find a lot of rewarding play styles coming out of that as well. You know, for instance, in our game, it's not uncommon to hear an explosion in the distance and wonder, okay, what was that? And to go to that area and two factions are fighting one another. And that's not always scripted. Sometimes that just happens systemically in the game. And then you have a choice. Do I jump in the fray? Do I sneak around the side, grab some loot and get out? There's benefits and pros and cons to all of those approaches. We think that's a really compelling way to play a game like this.
So speaking of approaches, I'm actually curious. So why was the idea of a looter shooter implemented instead of a game like Left 4 Dead with survival aspects and modding for replayability?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, Left 4 Dead is an awesome game, but we wanted to make something different. We wanted to make something that we feel like has the Arcane DNA that we've made from games in the past. Games like Dishonored 2, Prey, most recently Deathloop. You could think of all of those games almost like a Venn diagram where they overlap in really key areas or critical areas that we like to tell stories in games, and we like to make games that have a rich, coherent story, systems that players can exploit and they can use to their advantage, maybe in some surprising ways. For Dishonored, we went a little bit stealth, and for Prey, we really focused on physics. And for Redfall, we wanted to focus on the world building. We wanted to focus on that narrative story. And so that's what we're focused on delivering.
Was Redfall always designed to be open world from the beginning, or was there a stage of evolution that led the game to become what it is today?
Yeah, it has always been designed to be open world. In fact, that was one of the exciting parts of starting a game like this. It was something new. I think it's natural to make games, and maybe you've made a few that are in a certain mold, and to want to say, we want to take what we love here, we want to break the mold. Making a large open world game, that was breaking the mold for us.
Your studio is usually not a multiplayer focused game studio. So how did you guys approach balancing single player character builds while making them all viable for multiplayer? And why the 4-player aspect specifically with Redfall?
That was another part of, taking on something new, was not only can we go bigger, but can we make an experience, an true arcane experience that you can play with your friends. So the focus has been on supporting all of those play styles. When you play single player in Redfall, you are playing by yourself. There's no AI squad mates. And then you can add friends up to a 4-player squad. And what we found is as you add more and more of your friends, the game kind of takes on this almost like a party mode when you're playing. There's a lot of fun, a lot of action, a lot of ways that your skills and abilities can play with your squad mates. And it makes for just a really, really great time. But it has been very difficult to be able to strike that balance. Okay. And also, when you're playing with friends, you can actually go to the 4 corners of the map. We don't tether people. So if you wanted to go around and kind of, it's pretty cool. Yeah. When you're in a squad, the trust system gives you kind of a buff of staying together, and it helps you fight the vampires, but you can walk away from one another and you don't have that buff, but you do have the freedom of exploration. You kind of take on different objectives if you'd like. It's a really, really cool system that allows for players to kind of be expressive with how you want to play with your friends. You don't have to just be all locked together if you don't want, but there is a benefit. We encourage people to kind of come together.
So you've specified that Redfall will be more like Far Cry than Left 4 Dead. So how will that be reflected with replayability once players beat the story?
Playing Redfall and the experience that is similar, I guess, in other open world experiences is that as you move through the world, there's no loading screens in any of the kind of open world areas, any of the open world maps. You're not loading into anything. You're just able to walk through those seamlessly. And each of those big maps has neighborhoods inside of it. And like we talked about the developer direct, players are going to be challenged to find safe houses in those neighborhoods and complete safe house missions to then free that neighborhood and kind of take that back from the vampires. That provides rewards and things for the player that then allow them to be able to advance through the story. And with multiple difficulty modes and kind of choosing when and where you take on certain missions, playing with friends or playing a new hero, trying out a different spec, all of those things add to, I think, a lot of replayability within the game.
Thank you so much for answering all of our burning questions, Ben, and for joining us. We cannot wait to play your game. And speaking of, you'll be able to play Redfall on May 2nd on Xbox and PC.